Thank you very much, Karen. Appreciate that. My name is Peter Upshall, and I'm an energy management engineer with the takeCHARGE team. And takeCHARGE is a joint partnership between Newfoundland Power and Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. This presentation that we're delivering today is part of a larger project funded in part by Natural Resources Canada. So we'd like to acknowledge and thank them. Certainly the webinar would not be possible without the support from the Newfoundland and Labrador Environmental Industry Association. So thank you very much to NIA as well. And thank you for taking the time to join us today to be part of the EVerything EVs is plugging into the EV market right for you and for your business. So let's get started. First, we'll go through a couple of housekeeping items. Please mute your microphones for optimal audio. Keith Barrett, the manager of energy conservation, will be the session moderator. So he'll be keeping an eye on the chat function there in the chat section. If you've got any questions, please jot them down and send them along. When they hit you, Keith will be looking for opportunities to interject with any questions that do come in. So keep that in mind as well, but we certainly welcome questions at any point. So the agenda for today's presentation, we'll look at EV 101, a high-level view of EVs. And of course, EVs is short for electric vehicles, so you'll certainly hear me say EV quite a bit today. And of course, we are talking about electric vehicles. And EVs are here, so we'll look at the North America picture and then at Newfoundland and Labrador. Very important issue is charging, so we'll look at electric vehicle chargers and then look at the issue of electric vehicles for you and for your fleet. So let's jump right in to the EV 101. Really two main types of electric vehicles. There's the all-electric, which is driven just by batteries, high-capacity batteries. You can plug into a regular electrical outlet, or you can have specialty charging equipment. And the average range for new 2020 models is about 380 kilometers. By comparison, back in 2013, the average range was about 220 kilometers. So about a 70% increase. And the range of EVs tends to be a primary consideration for most people when they're thinking about them. The second type of electric vehicle is the plug-in hybrid, and that's the type that Karen's got. So it uses a combination of those high-capacity batteries to operate in electric mode, and then when the capacity of the batteries is low, it'll kick in and use gas to operate, much like a regular electric vehicle in most ways. It's burning gas to propel you down the highway. As Karen mentioned, the vast majority of its driving could be done in electric mode as you're just, buzzing around town, commuting to and from work. So that could be a nice option as well. That's the two main types of vehicles. So with more models on the market, more charging stations throughout the province, and better driving range, we're certainly expecting more drivers will be making the switch from gas to electric. EVs are here, and let's start by taking a look at the growing number of EVs on the road in North America with a focus on the number of EVs on the roads in our province. So the numbers are growing, and if we look at the US at their 1.5 million EVs, that's impressive. Canada is a little bit behind, but the per capita number, the number of EVs compared to sales is actually higher in Canada. So that's a positive thing. And in a move to increase EV adoption rates in Canada, the federal government announced national targets for EVs. So by 2025, the target is to have 10% of vehicle sales at the electric vehicles, 30% by 2030, and 100% of car sales would be EV by 2040. So that's the federal government targets. the federal government has introduced a $5,000 incentive on the purchase of an EV. And since the rebate was introduced in 2019, overall EV sales have increased by 30% compared to the same period a year earlier. So we'll talk a little bit more about those federal incentives a little bit later. As I mentioned earlier, as recently as the first and second quarters of 2020, 3.5% of new vehicle sales were electric vehicles. So EVs are growing in popularity in Newfoundland and Labrador as well. There are currently over 190 EVs on the road, and those are all electric vehicles. So the plug-in hybrids would be in addition to that 190 number. So while the current number is still modest, it's up from 41 back in 2015. So it's starting to grow, and certainly the trend in North America will suggest that things are certainly going in the electric vehicle direction. Customers are becoming more and more interested in electric vehicles. A recent survey showed that 25% of customers are interested in purchasing an EV, and it's up from 17% the year before. So charging your electric vehicle is an important factor when people think about EVs, particularly for your industry. So we'll take a look at charging behaviors and the different types of chargers available. Over 95% of charging happens at home or at work, with the majority taking place at home. So it eliminates most of those trips to the gas station, unless you have the plug-in hybrid. But it's important to keep in mind that most of the charging can happen at home. So there's a big convenience factor to that. There are three types of chargers that we'll talk about. Call them level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 is just a regular plug-in. It plugs into a 120 volt outlet, and the charge rate, how much capacity you get, that's the slowest level. It's 5 kilometers per hour. So you can just plug it into a regular outlet, and it's going to deliver about 5 kilometers per hour of driving range. The level 2 chargers are often installed at home or at workplaces. They're the most common type of charger, and the charge rate, it's much better at 40 kilometers per hour. So typical driving of about 50 kilometers a day for an average Newfoundlander means just over an hour you can recharge and have a full charge again. So again, level 2s deliver about 40 kilometers per hour of charging, and they're the most common type. The last one is a level 3 charger, also referred to as direct current fast chargers, or some people just call them fast chargers. And they provide the fastest rate of charge. For most vehicles, you can get to 80% of your battery capacity within 30 minutes of plugging in. These are typically installed along highways or in highly populated areas. And the charge rate for these is approximately 300 to 400 kilometers per hour. So for an hour of charging, you can go up 300 to 400 kilometers. And charging on electric vehicles is interesting in that when it hits that 80% battery capacity rate, it slows down. So, for most fast charger people are going to use it less than an hour. But again, just to give you an idea of the hourly charge rate, it's 300 to 400 kilometers. So pretty fast, to say the least. So on the level 2 chargers, the most common type, they all use 240 volts as the voltage, and there are, again, two main types. There's a plug-in level 2 charger that's suitable for residential indoor use and requires a 240 volt outlet. So you just plug the charger into a 240 volt outlet, much like your stove would be plugged in, or your clothes dryer. And these chargers typically cost anywhere from $500 to $1,500. Then there's a hardwired charger. So these are wired directly back to the panel. They're not, plugged in and unplugged as you go. They're suitable for residential or commercial use and require that 240-volt circuit. And they're definitely suitable for outdoor installs. There are two types of hardwired systems. There's the wall mounted, so it goes right on the side of the building or home, and again, can be used for residential or commercial use. The wall mounted units typically cost $1,200 to $1,500. And there are also pedestal type. So it's a standalone unit on a pedestal. You could say it looks a bit like a gas pump, but it's there on a pedestal. And these chargers are a little more expensive, probably around $6,000. But there's a project around that because it's separate from the building. You have to do some excavation work, trenching, and so on, and running electrical conduit out to that charger unit. So the prices will vary quite a bit more depending on if you're going across a parking lot, how far away from the building you're going to be located, that type of thing.
Peter, I'm going to jump in here. We do have a couple of questions.
Yep.
I do see some other ones that I think will be addressed later in the presentation, so we'll get to these later. But there is one here that says, is there any adverse effects on the battery life if you're using, say, a level 1 charger versus a level 3 charger?
Yeah, good question. So most people are going to be using the level 2, so I'll change the question a little bit if I can and say, level 2 charging, which is the common one, is there's sort of no adverse effects on the batteries. Conversely, level 3 is a type of charging that can take some rated life away from the batteries. So it's the type of charging that you don't want it to be your primary charging, but if you are having that road trip across the island, for example, or you need to get a fast charge, then yeah, you use that as required, but it wouldn't be preferred to be using that on a daily basis because it does take away some battery capacity because of the rate of charge. Yeah, that's a good question. So we'll move on to the next one. Here's what you need to know about installing those level 2 chargers. It needs to be done by a qualified electrician. There has to be a 240-volt circuit available. And if that's not the case, there may be upgrades to the electrical panel or service required to accommodate the charger. The typical demand on a charger is about 70 kilowatts, or I'm sorry, 7 kilowatts for a charger. But interestingly enough, the electric vehicle itself kind of is the brains of the operation, and it comes, and when you plug into a level 2 charger, it will determine how quickly it can charge itself. So 7 kilowatts is kind of on the high end, but if there's only capacity there for 3 or 4 kilowatts, then that's what it will use to charge the vehicle. And if you're installing a charger for a business or at a customer's business, again, same sorts of issues, has to be done by a qualified electrician. And if it's a pedestal type, there may be upgrades to the parking lot in terms of excavation work, paving, and so on. So keep that in mind for commercial type installs. So if some of the benefits of having a pedestal charger at your business, depending on the type of business, is that it can bring in some EV owner traffic into your site. And if they're there for 30 to 60 minutes, many of those customers will plug in. They can be located anywhere. So there will be some at gas stations as we move along, but they certainly don't need to be. They're just refueling spots for EVs, and we're seeing them pop up at places like the Avalon Mall, for example, has got charging stations. Hotels could also have a charging station. It shows a commitment to sustainability and the environment, and it will be part of our province-wide charging network. Sometimes employees express an interest in having EV charging at their place of work, and it can be an attraction for the right type of employee, for sure. An environmentally minded employee, no doubt.
Peter, I'm going to interject again here now. We do have a
Yep.
question that's kind of on level 2 charging, and I may be able to touch base on this one as well. Can we benefit from some technologies such as a smart grid and using chargers at home? And can you tell us more about indoor charger investments? Is there any incentives for this? So I would say we're really at the infancies in terms of smart grid, in terms of EV adoption in the province and load on the system and load it can contribute to the system. Right now, it's definitely at its infancy, but it's something we'll be keeping our eye to in the future. And in terms of investments for chargers at home and workplaces, we do have a plan, a 5-year plan in front of the Public Utilities Board now. The utilities do it under the takeCHARGE banner. And we're awaiting a decision on that plan. But that plan does include incentives for charging infrastructure and also for vehicle purchase incentives. So we're hopeful to get that through the regulator and get approval on that. And then we'll be able to kind of enhance the incentives offered by the federal government and introduce some level 2 charging incentives as well.
Thanks, Keith, for that response. And some people may already be aware, but certainly within chargers, you can get smart chargers that offer managed charging. So that's something that as a utility we're interested in, and some customers will be as well. For example, for a level 2 pedestal charger, there can be 2 chargers there, and you can operate them so that one or both vehicles are getting a charge, and it's managed in terms of the level of demand. And so you can set it up as you like at different sites. But again, managed charging, smart chargers, definitely something that we're interested in, and they do offer lots of benefits for sure. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the province-wide network and public charging stations throughout the province, an easy way to begin is by checking out charging stations in your area. Websites like Charge Hub, that's Charge Hub, PlugShare, and Charge Point can help you determine if there are any charging stations nearby. Right now, there are over 50 local charging stations listed on the sites, and these are a combination of level 2 and level 3 chargers, and there are more chargers to come. Next slide. Thank you. By the end of 2021, could potentially be 33 direct current fast chargers or level 3 chargers across the province. 14 of these will be up and running in the coming weeks. These are being installed by Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. They're indicated in blue on the map, and an additional 19 by the end of 2021, combined with Newfoundland Power and Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro. So, about 33 potential fast chargers across the province by the end of 2021. So that is exciting for EV drivers for sure, and exciting for us as we, as the EV market develops in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Peter, another question. This is I was kind of waiting for this map for this one. It's about charging in Labrador. So are there any charging stations in Labrador, and what is the plan for the Labrador area?
Yeah, so there on that map we can see there are three shown. Those are in Labrador. Those are proposed sites, so they're not there right now, but they are coming. So and that'll happen as more and more of these units are installed. And the site locations for the ones that we see now and the ones that are proposed were selected through a public application process, and there will likely be future opportunities for businesses to apply to host a level 3 charging station. So it's moving along for sure.
Yep, and we got another one, Peter, and I can probably speak to this one as well, related to, so are there any amenities planned for charging sites, picnic tables, washrooms, etc., if none already exist nearby? When Hydro put their network forward beginning in 2020, and certainly our proposed network to expand charging infrastructure as part of that process for the public tender process where people can apply, we are looking at amenities as one of the criteria. So we do want these chargers to be in areas where people will have something to do, access to washrooms, have a cup of coffee, go to a restaurant, a mall, or something like that. So great question, but that is definitely a consideration for us when we're putting in the infrastructures to make sure that there are nearby things to attract people and entertain people and have something to do during the charge up.
Absolutely. I know the one in Holyrood in particular, you know, they've got the coffee station. It's there next to a gas station, and the boardwalk, the Holyrood boardwalk is you know, maybe 500 meters away. So all of those types of amenities certainly add to being able to park there for a half hour or maybe only 15 minutes, but to get that fast charge. For customers using a Hydro's 14 charging stations, the rates, the cost to use those for level 3 for the fast charging is $15 an hour. For level 2, that's just the slower charge rate, it's $1.50 an hour. And partial hours are prorated. Those Hydro chargers are located on average about 70 kilometers apart, going along the Trans-Canada Highway. So that was the goal. And of course, because they were looking for good locations with amenities, they're not always 70 kilometers apart, as you can see from the map, but that was certainly the goal, to have a network right across the Trans-Canada Highway. So a level 3 charger might be something you or your customers that you deal with could consider. And keep in mind, these chargers are you know, the most expensive. They're the fastest, but they're the most expensive, would cost upwards of $50,000. And they're most frequently found along highways or in quite high traffic areas. And if this is something that you're interested in pursuing, we certainly invite you to contact us at takeCHARGE to learn more, particularly learn about incentives that may be coming down the road, pardon the pun. So you may also want to consider an EV for you personally or for your fleet. And here's what you need to know and consider. So lower fuel costs, a big attraction and a big benefit to electric vehicles. You can expect savings of 70% or more with an all-electric. For a plug-in hybrid, you know, we estimate 50% or less for that type of vehicle compared to conventional vehicles. But as Kieran is experiencing, most of his driving is on the electric motors, so you know, he's probably saving 70% or so. And as we see in the recent weeks with the gas prices increasing, those savings can go up even more. Excuse me. For a typical EV, the cost for a full charge is about $9 or so. And so if you're going from virtually empty, I'll say the cost is $9. For top-ups, of course, it's going to be much less than that. And if you were driving a vehicle with a lower range, the cost would also be less than that, something like a Nissan Leaf, for example. You can expect reduced maintenance costs when compared to a conventional vehicle. There's no more oil changes or other fuels that have to be looked at. And these vehicles are particularly nice because the braking happens with regenerative braking. So when you apply the brakes, you're actually charging up the batteries with the energy from that braking. So that's nice. You can expect to get, you know, longer periods between brake jobs. Personally, I've got a couple of vehicles, and unfortunately, they're not EVs. But you know, I'm sure I have to do a brake job every couple of years for each one of those vehicles. And no more gas means more convenience. You just park the vehicle in your driveway, you plug in, and you start to fuel up with that plug-in. So you don't need to make that trip to the gas station unless you're looking for chips or snacks or other things. And of course, if you have a plug-in hybrid, you will need to fill up from time to time. Performance benefits. Electric vehicles are fun to drive. They're quite peppy, and you know, there's no hesitation when you push the pedal, the vehicle goes. So it's It's nice. They're obviously environmentally friendly. No more CO2 coming out of the tailpipe. And in Newfoundland and Labrador, the transportation sector represents about 32% of the provincial greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a big opportunity. And I think right across North America and the globe, people recognize electric vehicles as a tremendous way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There are also some perks to being an EV owner. Public parking is often in convenient spots. If you're going to the mall or you're at the arena, they've got some choice locations. And there's also a great local community of EV drivers who are quite happy and willing to share experiences and information. So if you're interested in that, it's like I said, there's a great local community to help you out and provide information. And at takeCHARGE, we'd love to be part of that community as well.
Okay, Peter, we got a half a dozen so questions coming in, which is excellent to see.
Good.
So I think now might be an appropriate time to answer some of them. So between myself, me, and you, well, I'm sure we can get through them. The first one is I know that some dealerships are actually only allowed to sell one EV because they do not have internal infrastructure to service them. Is there any engagement underway with car dealerships to address this? So I can't speak for any specifics at any car dealerships of what they're doing in terms of limiting or restricting. We do know that supply in the province is not as abundant right now as it is in other provinces, and we do have in our plan, time spent and a method to deal with the dealerships. We don't have enforcement or anything like that, but we'll certainly continue to encourage them in terms of their stock of EV, their maintenance of EVs, and certainly, if our rebate programs get approved and we can push that through, and that increases the demand for EVs, I think the dealerships would naturally respond in terms of wanting to, they're still going to want to sell vehicles. So I don't think they're going to turn down sales by any means. So I think they will adapt, but we certainly do plan to partner with these dealerships and try to figure out what the barriers are and jump over those barriers. And Peter, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in on that particular point as well. That on our takeCHARGE website, we've got an EV section, and it lists the local dealers. And for most of them, there's going to be an EV champion that you can contact directly if you're thinking about EVs. So there's the name of a salesperson, so an EV enthusiast to help you out. So check out our website. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well, but pertinent to talk about it now, that there's a listing of the dealers and those EV enthusiasts for the various dealers.
Yeah, perfect. Peter, this is going for you. So what is a typical battery warranty when buying a new EV?
Good question. It's going to vary quite a bit. The rated life is typically 10 years for batteries. But I think what you'd find is that the battery warranty is likely to be in the 5-year range. And again, that could vary with the particular brand and model that you're buying.
Okay, thank you. And I may be able to jump in on this one. So PEI and Nova Scotia now have provincial rebates for the purchase of new and used EVs. Is a similar rebate expected for Newfoundland? Once again, I'll refer to the fact that we do have the plan in front of the Public Utilities Board, and that would have a provision for EV rebates that it would be similar in amounts, a little lower, I think, than what's being offered in some of these other provinces, but still, substantial. I believe it's around $2,500 we're proposing for a battery electric vehicle, and we are having a provision for used vehicles as well. So hoping to get there in the coming months, but we're in a wait and see pattern at that at the moment. But thank you for the question. Will there be backup generators at any level 3 stations in case of power outages? So that is a good question. Right now, the intention is not to have any backup generation. I will tout our reliability as over 99.9% on the grid. So we do have excellent reliability. But in transparency, no, there's no intention to have backup generators at these stations. Just with the stations, hopefully being relatively close together, that 70-kilometer mark Peter mentioned, if you do have the unfortunate happenstance of running into a charger that is down for a power outage, hopefully there's one nearby you can certainly avail of. And a good one for you, Peter. How does the cost compare to charging at home versus, say, the public or commercial charging rates?
Yeah, okay, that is a good question. So at home, of course, it's 12 cents a kilowatt hour and for that full charge is likely to be around $9, or I might say up to $9. Whereas the fast chargers, the rate is $15 an hour. So it's probably more like twice the cost of charging at home. So again, maybe another reason to charge at home as much as you reasonably can and save the charging at the fast chargers for what I'll call special occasions or longer road trips.
Yep, sure. And do roadside assistance companies offer roadside charging or plan to, or is tow the only option right now? So I can jump in on this one again. So not an expert in roadside assistance by any means, but I have seen some things, about mobile charging packs for EVs. I don't know. I can't say with any confidence that people who are offering roadside assistance in Newfoundland and Labrador are offering them at this moment. But it looks like they're coming, very similar to what you would have with one of those pre-charged USB type of ports for your cell phone. But tow might be the option right now, I would imagine. But I would assume it's coming. Once again, supply and demand, and once we see more vehicles on the road, likely we'll see these type of things adopt, and hopefully someone jumps in as an early innovator in this area.
Something else to keep in mind, and again, if you haven't driven an EV, electric vehicle, then you certainly might not be aware. But for example, we have a Chevy Bolt, and there's all sorts of information on the dash about driving range and how things are changing and percent of battery charge and so on. But the most important part is telling you how far you can drive, and it'll sort of give a mid-range, its perhaps best estimate, and then a high and a low end. So if you're concerned about can I make it to my destination, if you use that low end, then it's gonna tell you in a kind of a worst case scenario how far you can expect to drive. So it's, I'll say, a little more detailed than what we're used to seeing the fuel gauge, and whether it's half full or 3/4 full or a quarter of a tank or what have you. Although these days I suppose the vehicles do often give you a range estimate. So maybe it's similar to that. So there's lots of information, and it is interesting because this is the third of these webinars that we've done, and that question has come up before. So it's on people's mind. We recognize the fact that range, they call it range anxiety, how far you're going to go, and if you could run out of battery power before you get to your destination. That's a real thing for a great many people. But probably for that reason, as much as any, the EVs, the vehicle itself, really gives you a lot of information on how far you can drive with your current battery capacity and so on. So it's probably extremely unlikely to happen, but certainly understand the question and appreciate it, because that is on people's minds for sure.
Yeah, related to battery capacity, with what you just mentioned, Peter. So I have a question. Can you please talk about the issues of heating and defrosting during the winter? So I guess around battery performance in colder times of the year.
Right, and there is definitely a decrease in driving range in the winter when it's -5 outside. For example, our vehicle, the Chevy Bolt, on a typical day or maybe a summer's day when it's above freezing, the maximum range is probably around 370 kilometers. But if you go out on a day when it's -10, the range that it's going to give you is more like probably 220 to 240 kilometers. So, significantly less, maybe about 30% or so less, maybe 35%. And the reason the range is less is largely because it knows there's going to be, heating going on in the cabin, which comes from electric resistance, so it draws on the batteries that defrost, like you said. I got to admit, I don't have a steering wheel warmer in my personal vehicles, but there's one in the Bolt, and it is nice. So any of those little auxiliary things will consume a little bit of electricity, and that does bring down the range during winter driving. One of the recommendations is that when the temperature goes below 0 degrees, you keep the vehicle plugged in. And as well, there's a suggestion that during the winter, if you're leaving at 8 o'clock in the morning on your commute, that you preheat the vehicle to, again, maximize the range for the vehicle. So there's some built-in smarts for things like that. Great question, Zoe. Thank you.
Someone has asked if it's possible to get the presentation slides emailed. We are recording the webinar, so we can certainly share the recording. Just one just popped in. Similar question, Peter. Would air conditioning have similar effect to the heating in summer months?
It definitely would. It's going to take some of that battery power, but the range is probably not going to be as decreased in the summertime months. Those are prime temperatures for batteries as well. And just again, to put things in a bit of a context, Norway is probably one of the most, if not the most successful countries in the world promoting EVs, and it's colder than Newfoundland by a good margin. And so they're driving them over there. Arguably, you could say the country's smaller, and that makes the difference too. But yeah, all of those auxiliaries, like air conditioning, like cabin heating in the winter, they will use battery power, and so they will reduce the range somewhat.
This is on the, I guess, could be a downside on the quietness of EVs. So I assume EVs are relatively quiet inside, but could they also be quiet for pedestrians who may not be aware of the car around them?
Yeah, they definitely will. They definitely will, because they're, as they're sitting there, they're not making any noise. As you start to move, of course, there's the noise of the tires on the road and some wind noise and so on. But yeah, from that perspective, the vehicle doesn't make any other noise. There's no engine noise, put it that way. So I've heard some people are pondering that question and whether they should generate some noise from the vehicle. Yeah, good question.
Okay. Someone was researching purchasing an SUV specifically in the fall, but their options were very limited. So can we provide an updated list of availability? I have a couple of models written down here that, once again, local availability may be somewhat of a different story, but you can certainly talk to the dealerships. I know the Volvo XC40 is an all-electric SUV, the Volkswagen ID4, the Hyundai Kona, and the Kia Niro. And then you would have vehicles like the Mitsubishi Outlander, which would be a plug-in hybrid, which is like what Kieran would be driving. Peter, I'm not sure if you're aware of any other kind of SUVs that are.
Yeah, I am not. I know it seems like that Hyundai Kona seems to be one of the more popular ones, but availability continues to be an issue for us. So as time goes on, and if you're interested, you should express that early to dealerships for sure, to give yourself a little more time, because you're unlikely in the very near term, at least, to be able to go in and buy one off the lot, for example.
Lots of questions keep coming in. This is fantastic. So, Peter, can the vehicle run / warm up while it's plugged in?
Yes, it can, well, it won't run, but it can warm up in terms of warming the cabin and the seats and that sort of thing.
Okay. And are you aware of any movements to have building codes updated to have a 240 volt EV charger in Newfoundland?
No. Excuse me. The short answer maybe to that one. But one of the other interesting things is that because we're not out front, we're not at California or maybe even British Columbia or Quebec, we get to see what they're doing and the changes that they're making to their various codes and so on, and then we can start to work on implementing it here.
Perfect. And just a comment from an attendee. So the Toyota RAV4 Prime plug-in hybrid is also an available SUV.
Thank you.
And a question I think I can field again. Are there any incentives on the horizon for home EV charger installs? So once again, we are hoping to have some available should our plan that's in front of the Public Utilities Board receive approval. And, we're also always keeping our eyes out for what we can avail of in terms of any federal government incentives that we might be able to partner with to deliver to the province as well. So Peter, I think you're in the clear of questions at the moment. So
All right.
This is awesome though. Thank you for asking all the questions, everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Love the questions. Thank you very much. So in terms of considerations when you're looking at EVs, some of the main ones are going to be around charging infrastructure, what do you need at home and so on. There is certainly an added upfront cost, and then just that education and awareness piece. So on the charging infrastructure, most people are going to be wondering, how will I charge my vehicle? Right now, Newfoundland and Labrador has the least number of public charging chargers amongst Canadian provinces, but that is growing and growing significantly starting this year. So as I mentioned earlier, within the next few months, there will be 14 fast chargers. Those are Newfoundland and Labrador hydro chargers, with quite a few more expected by the end of 2021. And those are required to ease customer fears about charging. As I mentioned quite near the beginning, 95% or so of charging happens for customers at home or at work. And again, the vast majority of that 95% is at home. So that's the prime thing. Most people will put in that level 2 charger to be able to handle that, and that works very, very well for home charging. The capital cost for a new electric vehicle compared to a gas-powered vehicle is still pretty significant. We estimate around $19,000 extra to buy an electric vehicle compared to that internal combustion engine vehicle. We are hoping to be able to offer incentives, and of course the federal government right now is offering incentives on electric vehicles. In terms of education and awareness, still there are a lot of people, of course, that are not aware that electric vehicles are a viable option for them. And takeCHARGE launched a comprehensive website in 2020. So we invite everybody to come visit us on our website. It was partially funded by Natural Resources Canada, and it's really there to help educate customers about EVs. We do have other initiatives planned and hoping to provide customers with incentives as well as information. So that is
Peter, a couple more good questions in here.
Yep.
So I understand EV batteries represent a very large proportion of the vehicle's purchase price, true. Given that battery technology is rapidly evolving, like PCs of the past, do manufacturers suggest that newer batteries could be installed for aging EVs to expand the life of the car? So I guess doing some brain surgery and swapping out the battery.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question, and I haven't seen anything specifically talking about that. It is always a bit of a challenge, it seems, when you've got old technology that you're trying to marry with newer technology, like better performing batteries. But I haven't seen anything to say that is the case. But I got to think that there's some smart people thinking about it, because it is a great point and a great question. Like I said, sometimes just about trying to get the old and the new, to work together. Seems like it should be quite a viable thing to do, but yeah, I haven't seen anything definitive on that for sure to say that it is happening.
Mm-hmm. And Peter, do vehicles come with the infrastructure required for either level 1, 2, or 3 charging?
Most EVs do, but not all. So not all electric vehicles will allow fast charging. They will all allow the level 1 and the level 2, but not all will allow level 3 charging. But I think it's fair to say the vast majority do, and certainly the vast majority of any new vehicles that are purchased will allow fast charging.
And Peter, are all of the residential chargers universal? So if someone purchased one type of EV and then they purchased a different type of EV down the road, would they run into any issues with the residential charger?
Uh, they're I'll say trying, because can't say it's universal, but there's definitely a standard for the plug, that end plug that goes into the EV these days, and it's a certain standard, and everybody is trying to do that. There may still be some EVs out there, particularly older models, that maybe have something a little bit different and require an adapter. Tesla, for example, is a big name, and they tend to have their own plugs, but they also have an adapter that they can plug into their vehicle and be able to use one of those fast chargers that Hydro has, for example. So Tesla is a little bit of a different beast, but they have an adapter that, as an EV owner, you would have, and so if you're traveling across Newfoundland, you would be able to use that with the plugs on the fast chargers and be able to charge your vehicle. So, I can't say definitively all new vehicles will meet that, but there is definitely an agreed upon standard that everybody should be using, and should not be a problem to be able to plug in at any of the fast chargers or any of those level 2 chargers, any of those 50 charging public charging stations now in the province.
Another question. So with respect to the purchase and operating maintenance cost, when is cost parity with ICE vehicles expected, given potentially anticipated carbon pricing and other incentives?
Right. So the industry expects that to happen in 2025. That's the year that they're kind of hanging their hats on for cost parity. I'm going to back up a little bit as well and mention the fact that the websites that show you where the charging locations are, they also list what sort of plug is there. So, for example, the J1772, I think is a standard that just about everybody uses. So, if you go on to the PlugShare site, for example, and look at one of those fast charging stations that Hydro's installing, it will tell you what kind of a plug is there and available. So again, those sites are pretty good, and they give you a lot of information about the site, and it is a tight community. So you'll also find, some people will take a picture and post it, check in at the site, give a little bit of feedback in terms of their experience and that sort of thing.
Yep. And I know we are getting short on time, but I do want to prioritize people's questions for sure. They came here to get answers, so we'll try to get them answers.
Yep.
Any indications on if car insurance would be more expensive with an EV? And Peter, I know I haven't come across a definitive answer on that. I would always recommend checking with an insurance company probably prior, but certainly the value of the vehicle and ability to have replacement parts or things like that could certainly impact, I think, the overall insurance or insurability of the vehicle.
Yeah, that's fair. We know there can be differences in insurance costs from one company to another, so definitely worth checking with them to see what they would have to say, particularly your own, to start with your own insurance company.
In anticipation of electric trucks, would existing charging stations be suitable for those?
Yes, definitely. Yep.
Yep. Question: are you going to convert gas stations to EV charger stations or benefit from them? So, I mean, we won't be converting any gas stations as utilities. Certainly, we would encourage gas stations when the business case makes sense to invest in the infrastructure themselves, and certainly they can. Maybe it's going to be a gas and electric vehicle station, and certainly we know there are locations that will have both. By the end of this year, and possibly, and they do now actually with the Hydro's network. So, but we're not planning to intervene in the private market or kind of push gas stations one way or another. Is security for level 2 home charging a concern, and is it being addressed with respect to vandals and pranksters? I guess, you know, if you'd have an outside level 2 charger, it could be just like anything you would have outside, I guess. I wouldn't say it's at any increased risk for security or tampering. You know, and there would be disconnect switches and all that installed on, you know, where it is dealing with electricity. Peter, I don't know if there's anything else from an electrical perspective that would concern you from a vandalism type of ordeal.
Yeah, I guess vandalism is one, is a risk with many things, but the charger itself knows when it's plugged in. When you plug it into an EV, and then it can put power out to the end of the plug. We'll say the picture that we're seeing there now, it's plugged into the charger itself. But when you unplug it and then plug it into the EV, it knows that, okay, I'm ready to charge. So now it can put power at the plug. So I'll say from a safety perspective, it covers things off from that angle. You can't just sort of unplug it and have a live kind of circuit in your hand, if you will. Not till you plug it into the EV that it energizes that plug to begin the charging.
Question here, I might be able to field. Is there interest from public transportation entities such as Metrobus? Yeah, there is definitely interest. So, you know, we're still in more of an infancy stage and probably the larger the vehicles go. So there is an increased cost to going with those technologies. You need to have the infrastructure and knowledge in place to maintain them. But definitely Metrobus has shown interest. We've had conversations, and you know there are a couple of hurdles we got to get over that are legitimate hurdles. But we're certainly going down that road. And I could just put a plug in, I guess, for the city of St. John's in general. And there's been other municipalities that have been showing keen interest in these type of initiatives. So a lot of forward thinking happening for sure. Curious about the mileage of an EV. If looking at a used EV, what should we keep in mind for the amount of kilometers on it? Is it considered similar to wear and tear on a gas vehicle? So I guess in terms of age of buying a used vehicle, Peter, I don't know if you have any insight into that one.
Yeah, it's a great question. Like I said, the newer vehicles have a range, and that would be the thing to look at. I'm not sure how far back that goes, and if it gets so old and they no longer tell you what the full capacity range is, but that would be the thing to look for. Fully charge up the vehicle and then look and see what the range is, bearing in mind that the outside temperature will have some impact on that. So it would be different if it was -5 versus +5 or +10. But that would be a couple of tips in terms of trying to assess battery life and what's left on the battery.
Is there an option at the fast chargers to charge at a level 2, or I guess, or a reduced rate, but not? And does that change the cost? So Peter, I think that'd be more around the vehicle, but I don't think the cost would change per se. But
Well, it's a good question, and keep in mind that at those fast charger locations, there's the fast charger, the level 3, as well as another level 2 charger. So the rate is different. It's $15 for a full hour of the fast charger or the level 3, and then it was $1.50 an hour for a level 2. So at each of those hydro locations, there's going to be the fast charger as well as the level 2, and the rate is different.
Yeah, and this one I don't think we can answer really. It's but it's a great idea, so I want to throw it out there. So a majority of charger cords I see are simply manually coiled and hung up. Why is there no retractable solution? So similar to a gas pump retracting. So I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if it's being worked on, but if not, it sounds like a good money making opportunity for someone.
Yeah.
Is Newfoundland Power and Hydro considering smart home EV chargers that they could control as to balance demand load on electricity supply? And yes, we are. So as part of our proposal in front of the board, you know, we would anticipate having some sort of network charging capability to be able to balance that demand for sure. And do electrical power utilities view emerging hydrogen fuel cell EVs as competition, or is there an appetite to work with? I would say we don't view them as competition the same way we don't currently view a gas vehicle as competition. We're here to provide information on benefits to customers and what makes sense. So certainly, you know, there is a rate mitigating benefit from the consumption from electric vehicles as well. But no, I would say we don't view them as competition the same way we don't currently view a gas vehicle as competition. All right.
Super. We've got a few more slides to get through. I know the hour is 11:30 now, so you know, we understand if people have to leave, but we're happy to stay here and continue on and go through the last, I would say, half dozen slides. And so again, we understand if people do have to leave, but we'll continue on. So thinking about EVs for your fleet, there are lots of benefits. Those lower fuel and maintenance costs for an EV. Keeping in mind that at least for a typical Newfoundlander traveling about 50 kilometers a day, those new EVs with ranges of on average 380 kilometers can easily accommodate daily commutes. For a business, you may be driving a bit more, but again, that range of on average 380 kilometers is probably going to do it for most business days as well. You know, road trips where you're going to be driving a lot more, those fast chargers are going in to be able to accommodate that. And also worth noting that you don't need to have your electric vehicle fully charged. A lot of people that are just doing daily commutes, they may only charge every third or fourth day, depending. Kieran has got less range on his hybrid EV, so he's probably charging on a daily basis, and that's understandable too. And there are many more models becoming available. You know, pickups are pretty popular in Newfoundland, and Ford has announced they'll have a fully electric F-150 next year. So in 2022, there was some promo showing it pulling 1 million pounds of weight. So they certainly wanted to demonstrate the fact that the trucks can pull as well. So you know, lots coming. Chevy, GM, many more are announcing that they'll have pickup trucks coming as well. On our website, we do have model availability that you can go check out. And there is a local used market as well that you can tap into if you want an EV, but you're looking for something that's a few years old and at a much lower price. So there's maintenance savings. Again, thinking about your fleet vehicles. Sometimes people are wondering, will the EV handle winter weather in Newfoundland? And yes, it definitely can. The biggest impact of cold weather is somewhat reduced range. I'll say 30% or so, but it can still handle the daily commutes. You may need to charge more often in the winter for sure, and keep it in mind you got shorter range for longer road trips as well. So there are federal incentives currently available, and takeCHARGE plans to offer incentives if our 5-year plan is approved. So we're hoping that will be the case, and we'll be certainly making it known when and if that happens. So for the federal incentives, there's $2,500 available for shorter range plug-in hybrids, up to $5,000 for all electric and longer range plug-ins. There are some terms and conditions. For example, the vehicle has to have a price tag of $45,000 or less. So, you know, you can certainly find more information on those incentives. And again, we'll be announcing when and if ours is available. Let's take a quick look at our website. There's a short video there. Lots of great information on the website. You know, EV 101, some of the same topics that we were talking about today is available to you. Certainly the type of site where you can just go in and scope around and look to see what's there. There's a calculator to tell you what the fuel savings can be depending on how much you're driving. Give you an idea. So the fuel savings will be significant. There's also a CO2 calculator to show you what savings in greenhouse gases you can achieve by driving an electric vehicle, and frequently asked questions section that covers some of the more pertinent topics. So in terms of Newfoundland and Labrador, you mentioned earlier, there's over 190 all-electric vehicles and a lot more plug-in hybrids on the road. There's over 50 public charging stations available right now, with lots more being added. More and more dealerships in the province are selling EVs. Our takeCHARGE website includes a full list of those dealers, and and there's a contact list for an EV enthusiast at each location. So there's over 25 dealers listed on our website to date. Vehicle manufacturers are adding more models every year. A few examples: by 2025, General Motors will offer 30 electric model vehicles, and they plan to stop making gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Ford will be going fully electric in Europe by 2030 and will offer that fully electric F-150 pickup truck next year. Volvo announced this month that they plan to go fully electric by 2030. So we can see there's a lot of momentum building for electric vehicles. Federal government has that $5,000 incentive, and that's making electric vehicles more affordable. Fuel savings are significant, 70% or more fuel savings compared to gas-powered vehicles, and EV prices are coming down. Cost parity is expected by 2025. So by 2025, expecting that price to be very, very close. And of course, in Newfoundland, we have lots of green energy, over 90% on the way to around 98% green energy. So it's we're in a pretty good position in many ways. We've had lots of great questions along the way. Thank you very much for that. And certainly there's more opportunity to ask additional questions.
Yeah, for sure. And just a reminder, that the webinar will be recorded, and people can have access to that, and to continue to visit takechargenl.ca for information on EVs. But we do have another question here, Peter. Are you aware of any vehicle rental firms currently offering EVs? I would assume that would be locally.
Yeah, certainly not locally, and I'm not even sure if it's started, I'll say, on the mainland yet to be able to offer that, but I expect it's coming.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions. Someone did put in a plug for the Drive Electric NL Facebook group, so currently has 646 members, and certainly I do follow along with that group. Self-admittedly not an EV owner right now, but lots of great information, lots of knowledgeable people on that site, certainly. Question here, Peter. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a note about cost parity, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yep.
So when we talk about cost parity by 2025, that means the upfront cost of the vehicle. So if you're comparing a gas car versus an electric car, then at the point of purchase it's the same. But it's important to consider that the lifetime cost of a vehicle is a different thing. And right now the economics are already favorable in many cases for EVs. Due to operational savings achieved through reduced maintenance, no gas purchases, for example. So if you look at it side-by-side comparison today, in many cases the lifetime cost of an EV is already cheaper, and the math will only get kind of stronger in that regard as carbon pricing is expected to significantly go up. Gas will be much more expensive as time goes on. So then, in fact, when the upfront cost parity is achieved of the upfront purchase, then the math becomes very tilted towards EVs over their lifetime. So I just wanted to be clear on kind of what cost parity meant.
Right. Yep. That is such a great point. Thank you very much, Karen, for making that. Absolutely. So we've been talking about cost parity, meaning the purchase price, and obviously with the fuel savings, maintenance savings, and so on, those will add up over time, and as you said, look quite favorable.
Peter, if someone has a level 1 or level 2 charger on the outside of their home, as in they don't have a garage, would you anticipate cold weather would anticipate their rate of charge, how fast they might be able to charge?
Yeah, it will affect the rate of charge, and it will slow it down a little bit, but not too bad. Yeah, it will be a little bit slower. Some of the energy gets used for, you know, a little more for battery management when it's quite cold outside, and they do actually warm the batteries a little bit as part of the charging process.
And I think the only other question I saw here, and once again, I don't think it's something that I could definitively answer, but it was around mandates from government. So provinces such as Quebec and BC legislating manufacturer requirements, and do we predict Newfoundland would do the same? Unfortunately, can't speak for the province, and I'm not sure if Kieran is able to address anything, but I'm sure Kieran, and on behalf of NIA, is doing a fair bit of advocating in areas such as that. And certainly, you know, we're open to having discussions with government, providing them any information that we can provide. But certainly, it's a bit outside of our scope as utilities in terms of creating those type of legislative mandates. Good question. So, why are these vehicles expected to have lower maintenance costs?
Yeah, well, two main reasons. One, there's no more oil changes that have to happen with the all electric vehicle, and one of the other big expenses is brakes. So because the regenerative braking actually uses a little electric generator to slow the vehicle down, it's not going through brake pads and rotors and so on in the same way that a conventional gas powered vehicle would. So those are the two biggest issues from a kind of ongoing maintenance savings perspective.
Perfect. And any idea about government incentives with respect to lender financing? So I'm not aware of anything in terms of like buying down the interest rate or the financing rate, but the federal government does have those purchase incentives on those vehicles with an MRSP of less than $45,000. That will decrease the purchase cost, but I'm not sure anything specific to the financing rate. So on the application for fast charging, will there be another request for applications in the future? And yes, you know, if we do have a plan to install more, both Newfoundland Power and Newfoundland Labrador Hydro beyond 2021. So you know, when through the jigs and the reels, when we get the approval on doing all this work, there would be another public hosting application in those years from between 2022 and 2025. The number of chargers per year will vary, but you know, it is going to be significant again in 2022 is the intention. I'm not seeing any other outstanding questions at the moment, Peter. So I'll probably pause for a couple of seconds to see if anything else pops in. But I do know we are a bit over time is fine, and thank you for everyone who was able to stick around. And you know, these sessions are a lot of fun when we get a lot of these questions. So the engagement level has been fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got a little bit of contact information there now. If people want to reach out to us, they can do it at contact us at takechargenl.ca. So that's contact us at takechargenl.ca. And certainly I'm available as well. If you want to call me directly, 737-2603, 737-2603. And my name again is Peter Upshaw. So I'd certainly be happy to have a chat with you and answer some of these questions and others. And as a bit of a shameless plug now for some of our other programs, we do offer a lot of energy efficiency incentives for commercial customers that are doing upgrades, lighting being one of the most common ones, but there are lots of other ways that you can save energy in your business. So you can reach out to us. You can do that on our website, or you can call me directly. Well, this has been fantastic. Lots of great questions, lots of good discussion, hopefully, and information for everybody that took the time to join us. And thank you very much for doing that. And we'll wish you a great rest of your day and enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, and on behalf of NIA, I just wanted to thank Peter, yourself, and Keith, and the entire takeCHARGE team for your presentation today. It was fantastic, very informative, and we're happy you recorded it because we're going to be sharing this as well. Hopefully, hopefully you'll let us share it. But I think it's a great resource. You answered a lot of questions, and in the spirit of shameless plugs, there was one question about used vehicles. One of our members, the Electrical Vehicle Network, deals exclusively with used EVs. So there's one last shameless plug to end the day. So thanks very much to everyone, and have a great lunch.
Super. Take care, folks.